You're listening to Straight from the Psychologist's Mouth, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice-divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I have taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started. Welcome back, everybody. What do you think? I have an intro with music. I'm like getting really, into this whole podcasty thing. Maybe I'll even get to an outro at some point. But for now, with my technical abilities or lack thereof, this is the best you're going to get. But I'm feeling pretty proud of myself that I put that together. Again, if you're liking what you're hearing on this podcast, please be sure that you are sharing this with your friends, with people that you think could be, would enjoy these subject matters or could benefit from these subject matters, whatever you're thinking. And of course, do all the social media things where you like it and join and subscribe. And I don't even know what it is on, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, which are the 2 places, and Anchor, where you can get my podcast. But please be doing all the share things and the like things and the things, because of course that helps get the word out. And that's what I'm all about, people. 2023, I am helping women in midlife for sure. But truth be told, and I'm sure you've heard this, I really am kind of giving stuff that anybody could use. It isn't really a woman in midlife thing per se, but that is my focal group for my group coaching and individual coaching and my courses. And honestly, the courses could go for anybody too, but whatever. Go on over to learntoloveyourstory.com. If you haven't seen any of those things, you can either click on how to work with Dr. Natalie, or you can just work or click on coaching and courses, and you'll see a little bit more information about that. But without further ado, let's jump in. It's February, and I want to talk about relationships, and I want to talk about love. And last week, we talked a little bit about how there seems to be this combination of successful women and problems in relationships for successful women. And what the heck, and why is that? So if you haven't listened to that podcast, it's actually really interesting science. So I would encourage you to hop on over to the first week in February where I released that particular podcast. And I think I titled it something like The Power of Telling Our Stories. Is that right? No, that was the week before. It was about relationships. So just go to the one that's before this one. You'll get there. Again, when you're a one-woman show, who knows? It's episode 5. That much or 6. Oh my gosh. It's episode 6. So go over to episode 6, whatever the title is that I put on that. Okay. Today, however, we're going to talk about a different relationship. And that relationship is the relationship that we have with ourselves. And it gets a lot of kind of pop culture-y kind of stuff when you Google stuff like have a good relationship with yourself, self-love, self-care. When you start to Google and look that kind of stuff up, you do get kind of barraged by a lot of BS if you want me to be honest, as a clinical psychologist. And when I start to look at that stuff and I see what comes up, I'm kind of like, yeah, I get a little worried about what it is that you're reading. Check your sources. All I can say is check your sources, because certainly those of us that have some letters behind our name, not because we are any better than anybody else, not at all, but because we have those, we likely are licensed. We likely there's a board, there's some sort of certification process. So we do tend to know what we're talking about. And we certainly aren't going to put stuff out in public unless it's something that we have that kind of knowledge base with. I'm not going to just wax eloquent about things that I don't know about. And whenever I bring them up, if you've heard me on the podcast, I'll say, that's not my area of expertise. Go look someplace else. Because again, when you have a license, you have an obligation to be sure that that is your specialty, that you know what you're talking about, and that you're not peddling something to people if you don't know what you're talking about. So check your sources when you look that stuff up. If it is just a regular life coach, Mel Robbins, she's got great stuff. She puts great people on her podcast. If it's somebody that you've been seeing out in the light, generally speaking, they know what they're talking about, or at least they get people who know what they're talking about before they start to sell stuff or talk about stuff or whatever. But if it's just, somebody that you don't know from anybody else, just stay aware that their stuff might just be influenced by their own lived experience, could be really powerful stuff. And it might not be based in the science the way, the way the stuff that I present is. Because for me, I kind of want to take the woo out of woo-woo and put the science into woo-woo, because I know that, millennia, we've been doing some of these practices, chakras, and we've been, talking about meditation. We've been talking about these things. They work. And there is now, of course, Western science catching up to show you through the scientific method why they work. But if you tick like I tick, and I think if you're following me and you're listening to my podcast, you probably do. If you tick like I tick, I want to know why. Like, I have this just insatiable curiosity about it. And lucky you, because I have an insatiable curiosity about it, and I'm always figuring that stuff out and sharing it, I'm going to share it with you. So I will give you the information about why scientifically this works or that works. And last week, episode 6, when we were talking about successful women and why is there this strong correlation between successful women and their difficulties in relationships. Well, there's science that supports some of the reasons or hypotheses behind that. And I shared with you some of those last week. So this week, similar vein, I want to talk about the relationship we have with ourselves. And I want to talk about how, piling on negative emotion in our belief system about ourselves is really what's at the heart of why we get stuck. Now, how to loosen that is a really difficult thing. One of the courses that I teach on Dr. Natalie's coaching courses and community, again, go to my website, learntoloveyourstory.com if you want to get a link over there. One of the courses I teach is on self-compassion. And honestly, couldn't think of a better name than just self-compassion, building self-compassion or something like that is the name of the course. I just wanted to be straight up upfront about it. I get a lot of my material from Dr. Kristen Neff, and she has a ton of free material on this subject matter, on this idea of building self-compassion for yourself. And at the heart of it, what I really want to hone in on is how difficult having compassion towards the self can be in a culture that has conditioned women to be caretakers of all the others in their life, and has done this like from such a young age. Listen, I've got a almost 8-year-old, maybe she'll be 8 by the time you hear this. I have no idea. Her birthday's in February. So there you go. She was playing with some friends the other day, or with a friend, and then they FaceTimed another. It's the cutest thing. Can we talk about it? They're so funny. They have a friend that lives out of town that was really close to them. And so they all FaceTime each other, or Messenger, Facebook Messenger, or whatever. I don't know. I know I should be much more aware of how this is all going down, but I don't. But they were all on together, or 2 of them were together and they were on. I can't remember how this went, but I was listening to them try and get the others to do the things they wanted them to do. Cause that's kind of the heart of the problem for this little beautiful triad my daughter is in, is that they're all only children. I say that in quotes because clearly my daughter has older siblings, but she, for all intents and purposes, lives as an only child because she's so much younger. Her next closest sibling is 19 and not living with us. So he's the closest thing she has to an all the time sibling, and that's not happening. All of her siblings are in college or post college at this point. So this poor little one is an only child in that she's the only one here. So they have this problem with one another where they kind of are competing for, let's do the thing that I want to do. But I was listening to how they were trying to persuade one another to do the thing that they wanted to do. And what I heard was them in their own way preceding all of that persuasion with some sort of comment in the way of, I don't want you to be mad. I want to take care of your needs. This is a good thing for you. Just the way that they were talking about it was really interesting, and interesting to me because my other direct mothering experiences with my son, who's now 19. But let me just tell you, when he was 7, 8, and 9, and those boys got into it about, I want to do Nerf gun and I'm sick and tired of playing on my Xbox for now. There was no taking care of the other person's feelings. Nope, not at all. There was a lot of like, you suck, I'm going. There's not a lot of taking care of that person's needs. Now, I would consider myself a feminist. I'm a feminist in my, I've talked about this on the podcast too, but I'm a feminist in my therapy. I'm a feminist in my approach to what I do on Learn to Love Your Story. I'm certainly a feminist in my approach to my parenting. And even I cannot break from this really powerful cultural conditioning of genderizing boys and girls and how they show up in relationships. And we start getting girls ready to take care of others' needs so young, you couldn't even put your finger on it, really. Certainly you can't put a finger on it in your own history when you start to look back, but I don't even think you can put your finger on it. I can't tell you like what were the subtleties of the things that I did with my daughter versus my son, and culturally that was happening to them in a bigger macrocosm rather. I can't really put my finger on what gets, her in her negotiation to be taking care of your feelings as she's trying to persuade you to do your thing. And what for my son was just like, yeah, I'm done. Bye. See you later. Didn't care. Right. So this relationship piece is really important when we talk about women. Women are very acculturated to have compassionate tendencies and empathetic tendencies. We definitely can see, touch, hear, taste the feelings in the room. And for some of us, really, really well. And for some of us, kind of average. But I don't actually see a lot of women that suck at it at all, like at all, because it was so heavily acculturated. So if it wasn't a big deal in your family of origin, at least you're picking on it in the subtleties of media. And now with social media, man, that shit's on fire, like really on fire. So if you're thinking about relationship with others, turning it towards the self becomes a really awkward kind of deal. So while women have all of these compassion skill sets and empathy skill sets and the ability to kind of put themselves in the perspective of others, they really have a hard time, on the other hand, checking in on the inside about what they want, about what they need, about what they desire. Truth be told, they may not even have the skills to say, this is what I want and this is what I like. They can pick it up at a subtle level from an individual they barely know walking into a social setting. Oh my gosh, I see that lady in the corner of the room and I can tell she's really frightened and socially anxious and needs somebody to just kind of be beside her. I could name that from a million miles away, right? But if I ask them the question, what do you want in those social situations? Crickets. Right? It's interesting. It really is. And so I usually start my courses with that phenomena. Like, let's not be down on ourselves about this, because the next layer is to judge that we can't do it. We get very self-critical about it. I want you to be aware that culturally, the conditioning you've received has not been in your favor for being able to do internal look and internal compassion work. It just isn't there. So you are actually going to have to build from the ground up this neurology in your brain, this, new way of looking and feeling and hearing and seeing things, where you check in on the inside with yourself as much as you're checking in on the outside, and that you are able to show internal compassion as much as you're able to show external compassion. So I just want us to start there. Like, let's be graceful with the fact that none of us are good at this out the gate. None of us. And those of us that have been working on it, like myself, for a long time, not great still, because, the bulk of my 46 years up until this point, it's been at doing the other thing, doing the compassion towards other thing. It has not been towards doing it for myself. Now, so that's where we start. That's just our human biology, neurobiology. Then there's this other layer that's also a cultural conditioning thing, where we talk about caring for ourselves as women as a selfish act, as a luxury, not a necessity, and as a selfish act. If you get too much into that self-care stuff, like, listen, sister, you're doing a lot for yourself and saying no to your kids. Like, maybe you should be thinking about that, right? Like, you're saying a lot to yourself and saying no to your partner. Aren't you supposed to be taking care of that relationship? Oh my gosh, you're setting lots of boundaries at work and telling them no and only working on projects that you care to do. I don't know if that's going to serve you the best. I want you to know that our cultural conditioning, it's pretty insidious, meaning like we don't see it. Like, it's so underneath the surface, but there is a crap ton of conditioning that tells us that taking care of ourselves is somehow a selfish act. At the very least, that it is taking away from where our priorities should be. So even if you're not thinking about it as selfish as a whole, you are feeling the guilt, right? The conditioned guilt that you're taking time for you, which is taking time away from one of these other things that culturally, socially, in your family conditioning and your religious conditioning that you've been taught is more important than you. And I'm going to teach you the opposite. Duh! Like you didn't know that was coming. I'm going to teach you that actually taking care of you is the vehicle by which all of those other things are going to happen. So taking care of you is the most selfless act of all. Taking care of you is taking care of the vessel that takes care of everything else in your life, your people, your job, your relationships, all of the things. And because we're a relational people, we have to do that in the form of relationship. You are not going to be able to show yourself self-compassion if you can't relate to yourself. You are not going to be able to wrap your arms around the mean girl. By the way, if you haven't heard that podcast, it's a few back. Taming that mean girl means coming around-side her. It means having a relationship with her. So I want you to start to frame this idea of self-care and self-compassion and taking care of yourself in any way as a relationship to the individual that is you. And the individual that is you is so diverse internally that you really can start to think about it as a relationship, because you can start to break yourself out into different aspects. I do this all the time in the way I talk about it on here, where I say things like you have an inner mean girl, or you have this inner childlike part of you, or you have the inner mom, or you have the inner, successful woman at work. Like, we have lots of different aspects of us, very diverse aspects of us. Sometimes, honestly, if you wrote them all out like characters in a fictional book, you wouldn't put these people in the same room together. Can we talk about it? Like, really, you would not. Like, my mom's self and my party girl self, not the same person. And I like both of them for different reasons. And I struggle with both of them for different reasons. I have a relationship, though, with all these parts of myself, because it is the essential vehicle by which we're going to be able to show ourselves compassion. And here is why. This is how we think neurobiologically. When we are thinking about doing care, doing self-care, doing care for another, when we are thinking about being empathetic, We are thinking in our relational mind. It's activating all that neurology in our head about relationship and how we relate to and are related to other people. This has to be the same framework that we access when we start to build these muscles in our brain to have that compassion towards ourselves and have that relationship with ourselves. If you think of self-care as a thing, as a how, then you are going to get lost. So what we're going to shift it to is a who. Who am I talking about, right? So from the how of self-care, can't tell you how many times a week I am asked, Dr. Natalie, how do I do self-care? What is self-care really? It's not a what, it's not a how, it's a who. And that who is you. And you are so important. So we're going to talk about it in this framework of relating to yourself because it activates the neural pathways that know how to be compassionate. Now, they've only been really affording that skill set towards others up until this point, for the most part, but we're still going to activate it because you've already got that resource built in. I don't need to teach you hows and who's and what, or hows and whats. I actually just need to teach you how to have a relationship with the who there. Because if I don't teach you how to have that relationship, you cannot access any of those great skill sets you've already got, sister. I don't need to give them to you. You've already got them. They're built in. So this is the beauty, is that really all we're building is neurology that bridges the gap. And that neurology will be based in this idea of relating to yourself. You have to take yourself out on dates. You have to, take your body for a walk sometimes because you're feeling so stressed out and you know that accessing that resource of your body is going to build up those endorphins that's going to calm you down, right? You have to take care of that inner child. When you've felt wounded in a relationship, many times it activates that inner childlike part of us because the childlike part of us is the one that learned how to have relationships, and whatever framework that was put in your family of origin, that gets activated anytime there's a painful experience in relationship, right? So here's an interesting little factoid. If we think about ourselves in a relationship and we think about how much we fight different aspects of ourselves, we are actually creating that negative affect towards our relationship with ourselves. And that negative affect is just a cancer that keeps breeding more negativity. So like the coaching mindset shift, right? That if I'm a mindset coach, I'm going to talk about shifting into that positive thinking rather than the negative thinking. The way that I think about it as a clinical psychologist, and I've done some reels and little shorts on this on TikTok and on Instagram and whatnot, what we're really talking about is cognitive bias. So our brain does this thing where it weeds out some stuff and focuses in on other stuff, right? And people with problems like attention deficit disorder have a little disruption in that system, not wholly disrupted, but some. And really anybody with any kind of neuroatypical diversity. If you're familiar with things like autism and autism spectrum, that's a version of neuroatypical diversity. They have different ways of like weeding things out and bringing things in, and they have to learn different skill sets. But for the 68% of us that are in the middle, and that's really what it is, guys, it's 68% of us kind of neurologically operate about the same. So it's nearly 70%. That's, a third of us don't do it that way and have different ways that we're going to have to adapt. But the average, if you're looking at a normal curve, 2 standard deviations away from the very, very center of that normal curve are 68% of us on either side. Okay. So now that we know that about 70% of us kind of do it the same way, what's happening with cognitive bias is that our brain is just trying to act efficiently. That's really what it is. So it does the thing you tell it to do. So I want you to just, if you're not driving, because if you're driving, closing your eyes would be a real bad idea. But if you're walking, if you're doing some laundry, if you're sitting at home, listening to this, whatever, if you're someplace where you can close your eyes, I want you to close your eyes or wait. first. I want you to look around your room and I want you to name 5 things that you see that are the color red. Just 5 things. Maybe they're kind of red. Maybe you're not a red person in your house, but just anything that's in that warm reddish look. Name 5 things. All right. Now close your eyes. And as you have your eyes closed, I want you to bring to mind 5 things in that very same space that were blue. What? You're like, you didn't tell me to look at the blue things. You told me to look at the red thing. You told me to look at the things that were kind of red, Dr. Natalie. What? I don't remember. I don't remember if there were blue things. Maybe a few of us might remember a couple, but 5 will be hard because it's not the assignment you gave your brain. And your brain is doing a version of that activity all the time, subconsciously, whether you're telling it to or not directly. Now, the beauty is once you get more consciously self-aware, you can tell your brain with conscious awareness, I only want you looking at these kinds of things. However, subconsciously, we will operate this way as well. And so here's what's going to happen. If you are somebody that doesn't have a good internal relationship with all different aspects of yourself, you're going to be mad when a thing doesn't go your way, because that's the natural thing to do. But you're also going to get problem focused about it, because the natural set point of our brain is to see a problem, fix a problem. So here's how this looks in action. Your inner mean girl comes out and tells you, oh, you're going to wear that today? Like, that's what you thought was supposed to look so wonderful? Are you for real right now? You look like you're about 10 pounds overweight. Like why would we pick this? Okay. It's an inner dialogue that happens to like 1 billion women a day. I promise you, it happens to all of us. That inner mean girl comes out. She sees the outfit. She has all kinds of nasty things to say to us. All right. We have a natural aversive response to that. Nobody wants to hear that negativity, right? Nobody wants to feel that way. How those words land make us feel gross. Now, subconsciously, if you're not bringing an intention in and your conscious awareness is not under your control, subconsciously, what will happen, the set point of the brain is to continue to see it as a problem and try to fix it. But if you're seeing problems, you are in that state of affect or emotion. That's negative. Icky, gross, I don't like, I have to find something else to wear. Let me try on a 3rd outfit this morning. All right. That is not a good space. It doesn't feel good. We don't want to be there. It's aversive. And we don't get out of it until we find something that's like good enough. But many times it's only good enough. It's not something that like all of a sudden makes us feel spectacular. Some of us might get there, but many of us don't. And so what I'm talking about is if you have an internal relationship with that inner mean girl, you can show up very differently to this. You can come alongside her, give her a big hug and say, hey, girl, I hear you. You're just trying to save us the embarrassment. You don't think this outfit looks great. All right. But I love you. I don't like what you're saying to me, but I do love you. I get it. You're trying to help me out. All right. If I want to look a different way, if I want to feel a different way, I could go into my closet. I could pick out a different outfit. But let me just think about this. That'll put me about 5 minutes behind where I am, and I'll be stuck in traffic, and I won't really want to do that. I'm just going to go with it. I'm only going to see 2 people today in my office. I don't really care what my outfit looks like from the chest down anyway. Now I've brought conscious awareness to it because my relationship with that part of me allowed me to show compassion towards her and name I didn't like what she was saying, but I didn't hate her. And it kept me in a more curious state of mind. It kept me in a more positive state of mind. If you want to say positive, at the very least, it's neutral. And it allowed me to be in a solution focused mode instead of a problem focused mode. And in positive psychology, that's the mind shift that we're trying to help people to have is let's just keep you in a mindset that's looking at what's working or building on what's working instead of looking at what's not working in a problem focus and building off what's not working. This level of shifting our affect, our mood it's super powerful. Dr. Joe Dispenza, who has he does meditations and he has a lot of books out on how to like create, your own reality, how to change your future based on your thinking. He strongly helps us to see that if you do not pair the affect or the mood or the feeling state with the change in the thinking, won't matter what you tell yourself, it won't happen. That it's actually in combining both that you have to create a lot of positivity and belief and, real energy behind this new belief, or it won't happen. If you tell yourself, I'm trying to have that mindset that I'm going to make $1 million and I'm really going to be successful. And I'm, trying to keep my mind on that. And yet all I feel on the inside is fear about it. Like, ooh, is this ever going to happen? What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? You get into the hows and the whats again, instead of the who's. You're not relating to yourself, but you're relating to this thing, this outcome that you want. It really starts to keep you away from that very thing that you're trying to work towards. So you want to have an abundance mindset. You want to manifest your future. Feeling the fear and sitting in the fear will never get you there. Now, I promise you the fear will show up. She's there. You've got that afraid part of you. I promise. I'll see if I can find it and put it in the notes, but there was a YouTuber a handful of years ago. And I just can't think of this lady's name, but she was hysterical. So she would do like these little vignettes where like she's standing up with a clipboard and she's like, okay, where's everybody at today? And then she would scan the camera and it would be a version of her that like had a t-shirt on that said anxiety or depression or anger or something. And then like she would like, really have these conversations with these different parts of herself. And it was just hilarious. Like anxiety is like, yeah, we're not leaving the house today. Yeah, we can't do that. And then like anger would come online and she's like, bitch, like we gotta get to the store. We gotta do blah, blah, blah. So it was really funny. If I can find it, I will put a link to it in the notes because I can't even think of the name of this person off the top of my head. However, what I'm getting at here is if you have a relationship with these parts of you, you can shift into that mindset of solution focused from that problem saturated story that you have in your mind. So if I'm, looking at the anxious part of me who's saying, we're not leaving the house today, we can't do this. And I come alongside that part of you or myself, and I say, listen, I get it. We have this anxiety. We have this fear. The fear is going to show up when we try new things to manifest new things in our future. The fear is showing up to tell you, knock, knock, knock. We're doing a thing that we've never done before. Like brand new, like a new thing, right? Like we need to be threatened by that. We don't know what's happening over there. This is a body's natural system. It's telling you it's brand new and we don't know it. And it should be scary. It should be always thought of as a threat at first until we can prove otherwise. And so the fear is going to show up. And if you can't come alongside that and relate to yourself differently, you're not going to be able to transcend and pivot past that into a solution-focused mindset of, but I'm going to manifest all of this success in my future. I don't have to know the how. I need to know the who. The who is me. I am 100% invested in the version of me that's going to do that. So I just am going to keep relating to her, and I'm going to let the universe keep showing me what the how pieces are. And I'll do one step at a time, just the next right thing in front of me to bring myself on that path, right? Oh my gosh. So exciting. I love this idea of relating to ourselves. And one of the ways through self-care that we can really facilitate this is by continuing to build up a relationship with ourselves by taking care of these different aspects of ourselves. If the anxious part of me, if my fear is really creeping up on me lately, what is it that would take care of that feeling, of that part, that aspect of me that feels that way? I think that they're grasping towards certainty. They're grasping towards a how. How do I help that part shift to, don't worry about the how. I'm not asking you to have a plan for me. You don't need the certainty, anxious part of me. What I want you to do is just know every time you feel this way, I just want you to know that I got this. that this other part of me that wants to manifest destiny is like all over that future orientation. And, more than that, I really trust all the aspects of us because look at our track record. Like we have made lemonade out of lemons, right? Like we know how to take a really difficult situation, learn what we need to learn from it and pivot. And that track record, like I am completely betting on us. We're going to get there. So, and you're relating to the part and not what the part is telling you or worried about or fearing. We're not getting stuck in those hows and whats. We're pivoting into the who. That's what we're doing. We're taking care of that internal relationship. That's what we're doing. Do you hear me, sister? This will change your life. I promise you. This is just basic principles in positive psychology. And ladies, the research suggests a great deal of successfulness if you can start to do this shifting. If you can, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, start to pair that emotional state or that emotional feeling state with the new idea, that really is what brings it into your actual life. That's what actually manifests what you want to be seeing in your life. And as part of that, we have to let go of this strong conditioning that we have to know the plan, that we have to know what it looks like, that we have to, what if ourselves to death until we're sure that this how is the how that we need. I want you to shift the how to the who. Keep relating to yourself on the inside. And I want you to be thinking from your self-care regimen. Am I taking care of the very parts of me that seem to be getting in the way of my aligning my thinking and my feeling state into a place that's going to get me where I want to go? If that's the case, then I need to be relating to the who and getting that feeling state to be more in alignment with what I want to be doing. Oh my gosh, such good stuff today. I hope you share this with lots of people. I mean, hey, it's the month of love. Loving on ourselves is a huge positive thing to be doing, right? And it's hard. It goes against the grain, but it's not impossible. And science has really given us some really great steps. I mean, this is just not stuff that we're talking about in pop culture. When you start to look this up on the interwebs, you'll see what I mean. And again, just check your sources because some of the stuff is really great. It really is. But just check your sources and make sure they're reliable sources before you put all of your certainly hard-earned money. But even your time is precious. You don't get it back. So please only put it towards things that you want to be putting it towards. And thank you for putting it towards this last half hour or so, listening to me and, following me and sharing this podcast, because I really appreciate that this is a place that you want to spend that time and that you're finding this to be valuable stuff. Please be sharing it with everybody you know so that we can keep helping everybody learn to love their stories.